There's this little button in the center of the motion control area. It looks like a plus and a minus sign, and this is the motion math button. When you hit this button, you'll get a choice of motion math temporal, motion math spatial, and then add multiple keyframes. These are all different ways of dealing with manipulating your motion arcs. The first one has to do with time. Okay, so if I click on that, when we're working within this motion math window, this is moving keyframes around. So there's nothing really in here that you couldn't do on your own by just moving the keys in terms of time adjustments. When we get into spatial adjustments, that goes into another level. But technically, these time adjustments are the same as just grabbing and moving the keyframes on the timeline. Let's take this beautiful green path here of pan, and let's say for some reason we just wanted to adjust the timing on pan. We would say adjust all the keyframes on, let's go down here, virtual pan, and let's go ahead and scale it by 50%, so it's going to be much shorter in time. I say 50%, and you can see it's moved all those keyframes and it shortened the whole move of VPan into this area. There's another way you could go about it. You could just type it in here. If you know what 50% of your move is, you could type the frame number in there. I mean, if I say 25%, you'll see it squished it down over here to 25%. I don't want to have any of that happen, so I'm going to put it back out to 100% and say OK. Now, technically, all of those timing adjustments can be done from within the UI as long as you select everything, which means you have to make everything visual. So I'm going to turn off all these solos so all the keys appear. If I wanted all the keys to appear and I want to change the whole move, I could do that, grab the end and just look at the numbers and say, well, there it is at 50%. I could also solo pan. This is basically what we just did within that window, and grab this handle, and that's going to give us the exact same thing. Now we have a more advanced time control that's more precise called time warp, and we'll go over that in another tutorial. But again, here in the motion math window, you've got a lot of different ways to basically select what keyframes you're going to move on what axes. If you want to include DMX timing change there as well, you're selecting what keys from here, and then you're choosing how to adjust them over time. We also have this button called reverse mode that just reverses the move in time. So one way to do that here, if we say select all the keyframes on VPan, you say reverse move, it basically flops all the keys so that the first is the last and the last is the first. And I will cancel that so it goes back. Okay, now let's say you wanted to scale the move, not by time, but by physical space. So if the move takes place in a three-dimensional area, you want to shrink that dimensional area down. So you want to scale it down or up. This can be useful if you're matching shots that are in different scales, like a background that's maybe in a smaller scale and then a foreground element that's in a bigger scale, and you want to kind of put the two together. Again, it's the same button, but you go to Motion Math Spatial. And it looks very similar because you have the same basic idea, which is saying what keyframes, what area of the move do you want to be affected. Right now it's saying all keyframes, and it's looking at our move, which is frame 1 to 140. So it's basically picking up everything. Looking at this section, probably one of the first things you're going to want to do is to pin the move, saying where do I want the rig to be the same as it was the last time. So if the rig at the end, you want that position to be the same and scale everything around that, or the first frame. I'll say first frame, so I'll say pin start position, which is 1. And now I'll write scale the move by 50%. And it's basically now shrunk the move in space by 50%. So all the way along these moves, instead of moving 5 inches, it's going to be 2.5 inches. Instead of 10 inches forward, it's going to move 5 inches. Or instead of 30 inches, it's going to move 15. So basically, it just scales everything smaller. Now, as far as your nodal moves like pan and tilt and roll, those you usually do not adjust, because when you're doing a scaling effect, if you turn 30 degrees and you're in a miniature, when you go to the full scale, you still need the camera to turn 30 degrees. So you're generally only scaling, for effects at least, you're only scaling down moves that move through space, like a track move or east-west move or a boom move. We made a little scaling test where we took a wooden hand that is used for sketching, and we made one normal scale shot of it and then one 50%, like much smaller, which made the hand look bigger. And then we put the two into a composition and put the moves together, and it creates a cool illusion. It looks like it's one camera move with one large object and one small object. There's one more area here in the Motion Math window, which is add multiple keyframes. Now this is kind of interesting. You can basically drop keyframes on every frame if you want to. If you want to lock in a move, let's say we put a keyframe on every frame, and you see it does it automatically, which is kind of cool. And then you could go through here and unselect, where you want these to go. So let me just type that one in again. I think it'll redo it. Yeah, there we go. So now it's only on the north-south. And that could be useful if you, need to export something that has a position for every frame. Or you can also put a keyframe every 5 frames. We put this in there because we thought it might be interesting. Someone might need just a way to quickly put a key on every frame or every other frame. And if you're interested in more subtle controls of time stretching a move that you've already programmed, definitely check out the time warp tutorial.